Nothing contained in this podcast should be considered a substitute for professional medical advice. This content does not represent our respective employers and is purely the opinion of the podcast hosts. We are not your personal medical providers. Sorry, friends. So, if you have any questions or concerns or seeking advice, diagnosis, and or treatment, please seek individual, personalized advice from a healthcare provider in your area. We are not liable for any risks or issues associated with using or acting upon the information contained in this podcast. This is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only, so enjoy the ride. Welcome to Medical Media Mixer, the perfect cocktail. I'm Nicole Peniston, psychologist.
And I'm Tara Prisco, physician assistant. All right, round two.
Round two.
Are we ready?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling happy. I made my mom another one of the drinks. She has now invited me to record here all the time because she's enjoying having her personal bartender.
Seriously, and it's only like 1 o'clock, right? Yeah, 1:30.
1:30.
Two drinks in.
And this drink, well, the last drink had like 3 alcohols in it. This one has 4.
Ooh, you are like hitting it hard.
I mean, it's a Sunday. It's a nice day out. It's springtime. I don't have to drive home for like another couple of hours if I wanted to. So
nice. Yeah, it's sunny, but it's actually cold.
Which I'm looking forward to because my
and
house
windy.
is too hot.
Right, because your air conditioning broke. So cold is good for you.
Yes.
My thing is I went to a gymnastics meet this morning. So I had 2 cups of coffee, came home, had a Diet Coke because we had fast food for lunch, which I never get. And then now I'm having 2 drinks. I'm like, I need some hydration. I need some water after this.
Well, I downed half of a Olive Garden breadstick as I was preparing the drinks. So I was like, okay, I've got some bread to soak up the alcohol. I'm good. And then after this, I'll probably eat some lunch or something.
And I'm just going to give a disclaimer now. Everyone who hears my dog barking, I'm sorry. Some of my favorite podcasts have their dogs barking in the background, so I'm not going to get that excited about it. Yeah. Apparently, she sees people outside at their own houses doing their own thing, and that is exciting.
Be a part of it. That's all.
Yeah. She's like, it's me. I'm here.
Don't forget about me. As if we could.
So today we're doing fun stuff for this episode, and that was Nicole's idea because it's the 20th episode.
It is.
And statistically,
can you believe that? 20 episodes?
That's
insane.
Amazing. So statistically, if you make it past episode 20, you're in the top 2% of successful podcasts, essentially. Nobody makes it past episode 20, or very few. So that's fairly reassuring. And we're planned out all the way up to 26. So
I was going to say, it was true grit and determination on our part. So,
I mean, the recording part is easy, but like sometimes
the prep.
Sometimes researching and getting that done ahead of time, and it's like going to school while working full time and having life and doing all.
That part I don't even mind. For me, it's the part of we have a long running list of ideas, but it's what is inspiring me, and sometimes I'm just not inspired. But now all of a sudden, in the past 5 days, I've been super inspired. I watched something last night that I'm going to talk about in one of the next ones that we record, which I was a little disappointed in, but it's okay. I'm still going to talk about it. So sometimes you gotta get that spark.
I know what you mean, because we have a huge list of ideas, but sometimes I'm like, eh.
Yeah. And then eventually we want those ideas, but not all the time.
It's just not in my mood at the moment. No, I totally get that. But today is a fun one, so it should be less serious, a little more silly.
I'm excited. I'm so excited.
I knew it. Singing was going to happen.
I'm so scared, Zach. I'm so scared.
Thank you for the intro, Nicole. That was perfect.
You're welcome.
So my cocktail is called the Jessie.
Yes. And hopefully someone listening out there is understanding these references. If not, I'm going to be really sad.
If you are of our generation, you better. Yeah. Seriously. But I've even
iconic times.
I quote it all the time, and every time I say someone says I'm so excited, and my children look at me like, "Oh God!"
Well, I hope you tell them that you're also so scared.
Well, I had to show them the YouTube video, vignette of that scene, and I've showed it to them, and I'm like, "This is why you don't do drugs."
Which essentially was the reasoning for that episode, but it didn't quite land.
Yeah, we'll get to that actually. There's a little fun fact. So my cocktail is called the Jessie, and it is essentially an espresso martini.
According to your books you gave me.
It is essentially it's a espresso martini, but it's actually pretty neat. So you use 2 ounces of actual espresso, 1 ounce of coffee liqueur, whatever brand you can find, 1 ounce of vodka, and half an ounce of this Cafe de Ola simple syrup, which was a little tricky. So apparently, I guess some places used to sell this syrup, but I looked it up, and essentially what this is it's a bunch of spices that are made into a simple syrup and is used often in a certain kind of Mexican coffee called Cafe de Ola. So what I did, because I couldn't find it online anywhere, is I was like, all right, looking through my houses. All right, it has star anise in it, and it has cloves, and it has cinnamon. And I was like, I still don't feel like going and buying more spices. But I found I had this pack of pre-made mulling spices, which essentially had everything I needed in it. So I used that to make a simple syrup. So I used basically.
I have a random question. Is it just star anise, or are there other kinds of anise that I don't know about?
I don't know.
It's
just what it says.
Well, because I know it's star-shaped, like I've seen
right.
it, but...
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone go Google that for us.
Yes.
And email us.
Yes.
And tell us the answer
about your thoughts on anise.
So what I did was I took 2 tablespoons of those mulling spices at home with a 1/4 cup of sugar and a 1/4 cup of water, and microwaved it for 1 to 2 minutes until it was boiling and not boiling all over my microwave, and then steeped it for another 3 to 5, strained it, and I had my simple syrup with all the spices, and it worked. So you take all of the ingredients and you shake them in a shaker, pour it into a glass, and then what you take, which is like the extra little bonus, 2 ounces of whipping cream and 1 ounce of Bailey's, and you can froth that like with a frother or a mixer or whatever you have, and then you kind of spoon that over as your little top layer, and it is super yummy. And I have leftover of the sort of whipped cream that I end up eating with a spoon when I'm finished.
That sounds delicious. When I was typing it up for socials, I was like, I need to try this.
It was really good. So yeah, I mean, so again, I've had a lot of caffeine, and I'm going to have more caffeine.
That's okay. And you're going to be so excited.
Yes, hopefully by the end I'm not scared.
Hopefully not scared at all.
So we're talking about Saved by the Bell. It feels like such a core part of my childhood. I don't know about you.
It's a core memory.
Absolutely. I am pretty much 100% sure I've seen it. Absolutely. Every single episode of all of them, including all of the spinoffs.
And the movies.
And there was even, I saw some of the new class, and then there was a reboot, which I watched a little bit of, that was had a little more serious topics. Yeah. So it was an American teen sitcom, premiered August 20th, 1989. It was initially broadcast on Saturday mornings and became a flagship series of NBC's TNBC lineup. It was actually a spin-off of the Disney Channel's Good Morning Miss Bliss. And then later, I think they took those and just renamed it Saved by the Bell, because I think later you could just find those same episodes called Saved by the Bell, which was like the kids in middle school, essentially. And now they're in high school.
Was played by Haley Mills, also an icon of our childhood.
Yes. She was the twin. What was
She was from Parent Trap, the original.
Parent Trap. The original, of course. So this takes place in fictional Bayside High School in Los Angeles. And it's like a comedic situational drama, but they actually did try and hit some real serious social issues. So they covered drug use, driving under the influence, homelessness, remarriage, death, women's rights, and environmental issues. Cast, star-studded, love it. Mark Paul Gosselaar, who was an icon of the time, and then who went away.
Episode I taught, he was on Found. Currently,
he was yes, but he came back. Like he had probably like a 15-year hiatus, I feel like, and then he came back. I think he was in one of those NYPD Blue or one of those type things, and then he's just been all over the place, except for his dark hair now, which really confuses me. He's supposed to be a blonde LA surfer boy.
It's okay.
Dustin Diamond, who later did some questionable things.
And he passed away. Rest in peace, Dustin.
Lark Voorhees. I really liked her. I don't
have a direct way to success.
Yeah. Lark Voorhees. I don't know. Did she end up doing stuff later? I mean, I liked her.
She didn't do as much. I want to say she has some sort of autoimmune disorder, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
I vaguely kind of feel like I saw something somewhere. Yeah. Dennis Haskins. I guess that's Mr. Belding.
Yes. Mr.
Tiffany Amber Thiessen, another teen icon. Elizabeth Berkley, who definitely did some stuff later on.
And of course she did. She did some scandaloso stuff.
Oh, yeah. And then good old Mario Lopez. I mean, MC Hammer Pants.
He's a classic now.
He is. No, he's still relevant. But MC Hammer Pants and Dimples. And, that's all he needed.
And calling women mama. He was the only one who could get away with that. Everybody else. No.
Right.
But
yeah.
You can call me mama anytime you want.
So technically it only ran 4 seasons, but I guess because they're in high school for 4 years, and then I incorporate the college years and spinoffs, and then the middle school stuff.
And then they had those summer vacations when Steve Carosi was there.
Yes. So 4 seasons. Final episode was in May of 1993. And then the spinoffs, we have the college years, so 93 to 94. Okay. That was only a year? apparently. I don't know.
I remember that you only saw like the beginning of their college. You never saw them
Okay.
graduate college or finish.
And then Saved by the Bell, the new class, which was 93 to 2000, which is a new group of students at Bayside. And then Saved by the Bell Hawaiian Style in 1992, which is a TV movie.
Yes, that was when Jessie's dad got remarried.
I think so. And then Saved by the Bell Wedding in Las Vegas.
Yes, that was
in 1994. Wait, they're not showing in my list of things. They don't have the summer ones. I know exactly what you're talking about. They all worked for the summer.
I think it was part of the regular season.
Oh, was it?
I think it was just that the school year ended.
Got it.
Yeah.
So this particular episode, it's a very special episode with very quotes.
Special. It was one where it would have like a slower theme song.
Yeah. So let's see how it starts out. So they're all at the Max because, that's where we hang out. Everything's technicolored. They're all sitting in that
diner.
Yeah. And they all sit in that same booth they're always sitting at. And Jessie talks about how she's stressing out about her grades and she wants to get into Stanford. And then the girls start chit-chatting about how they want to make a girl band. Like there were boy bands and they want to have a girl band. Because, hey, we said we want to have a podcast. We have a podcast. Go for your dreams, people.
Why did we never have a girl band?
Because I can't sing. I could be a backup dancer or a front dancer or something, but I can't sing.
A backup dancer or a front up dancer. I love that.
So I guess in order to get them a big deal, Jack.
That's Zach's alter ego, apparently.
That's when he has dark hair.
Yeah.
He has dark hair. He's Jack. He has blonde hair. He's Zach.
Zach, yeah.
So Zach and Screech decide that they want to record the girls when they're singing in the locker room in order to get a record deal.
Which would not fly today.
No. So they send Screech in dressed as a cleaning woman in drag.
Which I don't understand because Screech was the school mascot. He could have just went in wearing his school mascot costume and no one would have given a second look.
I don't know.
He was the Bayside Tiger. I don't understand
right.
it.
And then you see throughout the episode, Jessie starts again, trying to get her schoolwork. I think she's studying for one of her math tests. She wants to do this girl band thing. They're practicing for that. Basically, they do get a deal that they're going to come and watch them perform live at the Max. They film a music video. The girls are in neon with, workout gear. And the song is called, do you remember?
It's like on the tip of my tongue.
It's called Go For It.
Yeah.
I did not link the music video. I linked stuff about the episode and a YouTube of the clip of the iconic scene, but I don't think I found the music. I got to find the music video.
But they also covered several songs.
Yes.
Such as I'm So Excited by the Pointer Sisters.
Correct. So throughout this, as Jessie starts to get more stressed and trying to get everything done, you see her sort of popping these pills to juggle studying and band practice. And they're supposed to be performing at the Max and she doesn't show up. And so Zach goes to her house and she has this iconic scene, which Nicole briefly reenacted, where, he finds her sleeping and then she wakes up and she's like, I need the pills. I can't do this. I have to get there. Like she's, so like worked up about how she has to get everything done. And she starts, spilling the pills everywhere. And then one of the songs, as Nicole said, they're supposed to sing.
Zach is basically like, you can't go to the concert. Like you're a mess. You can't sing. And she's like, yes, I can sing. Like, listen, I'm so excited.
Yes. And then she falls into his arms and, and then I believe they have Screech go and stand in for one of the girls when the record execs come. Right. Because,
no one's
that's how that goes.
No one's going to notice. Of course not.
It's iconic. The whole theme was supposed to be the dangers of relying on stimulants to cope with pressure. And it's meant to be serious, actually, the depiction of her breakdown. But it has become like memes before memes existed. It has been, in the end, it ends up sort of trivializing.
Yes, you got it.
That word. The issue, basically. So the tone that they went for didn't exactly work out in the end.
Well, and this was what year again? Remind me.
90, early 80s, early 90s. I don't know what year was this episode particularly. It ended in 93, so it had to be 92-ish.
Yeah, I remember watching that episode, and I remember thinking, there are worse drugs out there.
So here's the fun fact. In the original script, they had her addicted to amphetamines, speed, but NBC insisted on changing it for airability. They felt it was a little too dangerous. So
because it was a family-friendly show. So
right. If it was speed, it would have been a whole different episode. I mean,
Definitely.
right? Caffeine pills, we can all be like, all right, like it is what it is. Back then, and it's interesting now, caffeine pills, because you don't really hear about that because now we have energy drinks, right?
Right.
I mean, right. It's the same stuff. All right. So what I'm talking about today is caffeine, which is light and easy and not so scary, except for if you overdose on it, please don't. Are you a coffee drinker? Are you a caffeine drinker?
In grad school, I was drinking on average 64 ounces of coffee a day. It was definitely problematic, but I don't necessarily feel like I definitely was tired because it was a lot of work and it was a lot to do, but I was also having issues with pain and sleep at night. So the caffeine was helping me stay up during the day. But like, I don't remember using like on the weekends or drinking on the weekends. It was more of like
using.
Well, because you said caffeine pills. That's what I was thinking, like in my head. I definitely have reduced my caffeine intake significantly, but I also have chronic migraines. So trying to wean off of caffeine has been very hard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely a 1 cup of coffee at least in the morning. Mm-hmm. I tend to not have caffeine later. Once in a while, I'll have an iced tea in the afternoon. If I'm particularly tired and I know I have a lot of running around to do, I'll pick up one of those refreshers from like Dunkin' or Starbucks that have that added caffeine in them.
But you just said you drink Diet Coke, so there's caffeine in there?
I don't normally. That was rare. We got fast food. I don't drink soda for the most part. That's a rarity. Rare. Just today. I'm just hopped up on all the caffeine today. So yeah, that has a lot.
It does.
Moderate use of caffeine, so 40 to 200 milligram or 16 ounces of coffee per day is considered pretty fine. It's found naturally, caffeine, in coffee beans, tea leaves, cacao beans, and it can be made synthetically and added to drinks, foods, tablets, and supplements. So what we would consider a normal dose would be up to 200, and a very high dose would be over 1,200. So there's a wide range there. Up to 400 is really okay. So the amount of caffeine in each type of drink, let's give you that. So a caffeinated soft drink is about 23 to 83 milligrams of caffeine.
And I was just going to say, I did a training recently through the VA, and the amount of caffeine varies from manufacturers.
Yeah. Yes.
So I have a list. I can add it to the show notes.
Yeah.
Like Starbucks versus Dunkin' versus.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. And the brews and the type of brewing. Green tea is about 37 milligrams, black tea about 71 milligrams. Regular brewed coffee, non-specialty, can be anywhere from 113 to 247. So it's over 100 milligram difference in just one cup of coffee. And then an energy drink can be anywhere from 41 to 246 milligrams. And that is going to also depend on the ounces. So some of those are like a little shot and some of those are whole big drink. So you have to be careful. You do. And that is part of this. You can overdose on caffeine. It can be fatal. Most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's fine. So about 85% of adults in the US consume caffeine every single day. So it is technically, I guess, the most used drug in the world, right? Or at least in the US. I know some other countries are more for tea than coffee, so they're going to have less milligrams, but maybe they drink more tea throughout the day culturally. So you have to kind of balance all those factors out. And the average daily intake for a person in the US is about 135 milligrams. And for adults, mostly coffee, soft drinks, and iced tea, more for teenagers. So like we said, safe is less than 400. For pregnant people, 200. And that's by the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. So it's interesting that it gets absorbed pretty quickly. It's depending on, of course, I'm also not chugging coffee, right? So there was one of the sources actually was like 3 different doctors commenting on appropriate use. And one of the guys was like, use it like a drug, like microdose it throughout the day kind of a thing. Don't overdo it. You're going to keep yourself. So you can stay under that 200 or 400 limit, but microdose yourself throughout the day kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. But essentially it's absorbed into the bloodstream in less than 45 minutes. And the duration in your body is typically anywhere between 2.5 and 4.5 hours. But there are things that can affect the way you metabolize it. So it's interesting. One person next to another person may metabolize it differently. So pregnancy, oral contraceptives, certain antidepressants, not all, cardiovascular medications, and antibiotics can slow caffeine removal, so it can build up more in your system. But cigarettes accelerate caffeine clearance.
And that's like a chronic thing. A lot of people in like recovery programs like AA, they're constantly smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee.
It's like microdosing throughout the day of both to keep you in a steady stream, essentially.
Right.
And it does pass the blood-brain barrier, so it gives us that little energy boost and buzz. And it blocks adenosine receptors, increases your alertness, and reduces your fatigue. And it can, and we'll get in a little bit more about medical uses, but it can enhance the effects of NSAIDs, are things like Advil and naproxen and Motrin that we use for pain, and plus the prescription ones. So anyone who's had caffeine probably has had some of the mental and physical benefits. So reducing fatigue, increasing alertness. It could actually enhance our cognitive performance, like faster reaction times, which is pretty interesting, and can reduce the risk of depression and suicide. Have you read that or heard about that?
Haven't, but I guess like in a way, just knowing what you were just telling me about how caffeine affects the brain, I could see if you're having some of those lowered, word finding difficulty. I clearly don't have my caffeine.
Cognition, Nicole.
Yeah,
you need to
my
enhance your
lowered
cognition.
Yeah. I could see how it may balance out some deficiencies that we may see in the brain in depression.
So it does say it stimulates dopamine, which is our pleasure and motivation, learning. So I could see if it's enhancing your dopamine, it's that feel good feedback, right?
Right. But on the other side, which you're probably just about to say, I tell a lot of people who I see who have a lot of anxiety to reduce their caffeine intake.
Yes. So 2 medical uses we'll get to later is used to treat apnea in premature infants. Apnea means stopping breathing, and then added to pain relievers, like we said, the NSAIDs, but also acetaminophen, which is Tylenol, to help with migraines.
And it also used to be a big thing that they would recommend for little ones with ADHD when they didn't want to try medications.
Yes.
They would say, have a cup of coffee.
Yes. And the other thing they used to recommend it for, which I can't even find anymore, is asthma. So fight or flight, opening everything, stimulating everything, opens the airway. Do not use that. Please use your albuterol. See a healthcare provider. But that is something that I guess was at one time recommended. So some negative effects. In the short term, it can increase your blood pressure. But we'll get into a little bit later. In the long term, it actually can reduce it.
Right.
It can cause anxiety, jitteriness, and sleep disturbances. And it can cause withdrawal. So chronic use and then stopping can cause headache, fatigue, depression. And that usually peaks about 1 to 2 days after we try and stop it. We really would recommend somebody slowly wean themselves off coffee. Don't abruptly stop it. And you'll see that someone who's had surgery or someone ends up in the hospital or somebody who's not in their normal routine, they're not going to work. And then all of a sudden they're like, I have headaches. And then they realize it's because they're not getting their daily coffee intake. Yeah,
well, I had to reduce my coffee intake when I had gastric bypass just because coffee's not great for your GI system. And so if they're doing a lot of work on your GI system, you don't want to irritate it, especially while it's healing. And so I had to reduce it and I had a lot of headaches. But like I said before, I also have migraines. So I've gotten so used to the caffeine that reducing that was now triggering more significant things and headaches, more migraines. And that was problematic.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely quit altogether for my first pregnancy. Second pregnancy, I kept it at like 100 milligrams a day, like 1 small cup, just because I already had a kid and I was working full time.
Right, you need it.
And so that little bit was safe and was enough. So there is a toxicity threshold. I mean, it exists. So that 1,200 milligrams, which if you really add up, depending on what you're drinking, it's not that hard to get to.
Yeah. That's
if you have an energy drink that's 240, almost 250, and you drink 5 of those, you're over.
Or even if you have a coffee in the morning and then at lunch you have a soda and then in the afternoon you have an energy drink and then at dinner you have an espresso, you've probably already well over that threshold.
Yeah. So that, when we're doing it throughout a day, typically the limiting factor is literally volume that you can drink, right? So that's the good part, I guess. You would have to really, because it's in and out of your system in 4.5 hours, you'd have to keep up a particularly high volume to keep that 1,200 number, if that makes sense. That's 1,200 all at once, not 1,200 throughout the day. But again, with these very high caffeine things available now, it's different than when you had to consume this much tea or this much coffee. Now it's very concentrated. And unfortunately, there have been deaths. I know there's a big story from a family that was suing Panera because they had those high caffeine drinks, and the person had
were really tasty and they did not taste caffeinated.
Right, because they're adding this like concentrated caffeine. I think they take it from like guarana or something else. They
don't
extract
even make them
it
anymore. They stopped making those drinks, which sucks because I loved those.
I have to say the Dunkin' Refresher is not bad, and it's not super sugary either, not super high in calories, and has less calories than the Starbucks ones. So yeah, I'll usually, if I was to go for something like that, I would go for that. But it is, like I said, rarely seen to hit that toxicity level just because of the amount of volume you would have to drink.
Well, in that one case too, I would also question if the person had like pre-existing conditions, like a heart condition or something else that now.
And that person did. I believe that was documented. They did. It reminded me though, just funny. We talk about drinking caffeine. I mean, caffeine is in chocolate. Again, you'd have to have a whole lot of chocolate. I do remember there being in Whole Foods many years ago, these little chocolate caffeine candies at like the checkout line. And then the little shot caffeine drink or energy drinks. They're little, caffeine.
Like, hard candies that are, it's called like hard coffee or something. And it's like a sucking candy, but it's
this
coffee.
One was like chewable that I recall, but yeah. And then the little tiny energy drinks, those have a lot of B vitamins. So that's part of their selling, and they only have 100 milligrams of caffeine in them. So it's a little bit better, but don't go shooting a bunch of them because that's low volume. So symptoms of an overdose. A lot of it's kind of what you would think, that agitation, severe anxiety, elevated blood pressure, palpitations, but eventually it could cause like a shock and cause respiratory issues and heart rate issues, could throw you into an arrhythmia. And what's interesting, caffeine mixed with alcohol
which is what you're drinking.
Right, I know. Or caffeine with intense exertion. Can lead to severe, even fatal outcomes. So I guess, if you're doing some sort of a exercise or race or some sort of a thing and you've loaded up with a pre-drink with a ton of caffeine.
And that's a big thing. They're encouraging a lot of that. Like, do this pre-workout drink. It's got this amount of caffeine in it. It's like,
Right. So, there are some health benefits. So we'll go for the positive, just like, with apple cider. No. And just like apple cider vinegar, the dose makes the poison, the no cure-alls cure nothing, but again, part of a healthy lifestyle. So consumption of 2 to 5 cups a day have been linked to decreased mortality. I believe that's of coffee. It doesn't discern coffee or tea. Can reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes, endometrial cancer, liver cancer, and gallstones. Again, will not cure, may slightly reduce risk. Will not completely prevent. And also reduce risk of Parkinson's and liver cirrhosis. So again, these are compiling information from multiple studies. We're never going to tell somebody to add something extra. If you're not a coffee drinker, don't pick it up. If you're not there might be some statistical differences between people who taking caffeine and people who do not, but it's not significant enough for me to tell you every person should be having caffeine daily. Just like we've seen about alcohol. Oh, glass of red wine, a day is heart protective. And then now we say there is no amount of alcohol that's safe. But we also say that it's okay to have 7 drinks a week. I don't know.
I also apologize. Someone is deciding to mow their lawn outside my window.
I thought I heard something, but I didn't know if it was outside my house or yours. I couldn't tell.
It's here. Sorry.
Because I'm right at a window in mine. So
yes, there's 2 windows, but sorry.
It's okay. So cardiovascular. So what's interesting is in the temporary, like we said, it can raise your blood pressure. In the long term, it may reduce risk of cardiovascular disease when used in moderation. And it's interesting. So an arrhythmia, a very common arrhythmia that we see is something called atrial fibrillation. And there's no significant increase in that abnormal heart rhythm in coffee, right, like routine coffee intake. So it's interesting. Like you would think once someone has AFib, you may tell them to reduce their caffeine. Right. But having caffeine does not increase their risk of going into that rapid heart rate. So it's interesting. Again, we know it's used by athletes for exercise duration, decreased fatigue perception. People say like it makes them more focused. They need to go into an interview. They need to do whatever. They need that little dose of caffeine to get them through.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's because I've been drinking coffee for so long, but I don't get that from it.
No, yeah.
I feel like if anything, coffee kind of keeps me at my baseline. Although I will say certain coffees, like I can't drink Starbucks coffee, like they're straight coffee, because I do feel then more jittery and more rapid heart
Right.
rate with that, but I just choose their other drinks and then it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So short term, like we said, it can increase your blood pressure. Yeah, it can 200 to 300 milligrams of caffeine can increase your blood pressure, 8.1 for the top number, 5.7 for the bottom number for up to 3 hours.
Mhm.
So it's not a huge amount, but when you're talking, say, you come into your doctor's office and you had a cup of coffee right before you came in and, your blood pressure is 145 over 95.
Or something a lot of people don't realize, if you're going to physical therapy, a lot of times they'll take your blood pressure before you start your PT and then after. And if you've had chugged a big old cup of coffee before you went into PT, they may not let you do your physical therapy for that day.
Right. And so that's where I'm talking to somebody and well, you're now borderline, like you are stage 1 hypertension because you're over 140 over 90.
Mm-hmm.
But if they just had that, they would have been below without it. So a little tricky. So yes, like I was getting to say, but over the long term, in lower use can reduce the risk of becoming hypertensive. Interestingly enough, cholesterol can also be, which I was not aware of. Had you heard of that?
No, but tell me more.
So it's specifically certain methods of brewing because there's something in coffee called caffeistol, which I assume is like a plant sterol based on the name. In unfiltered coffee. So mixed results. Some indicate higher triglycerides, while others suggest caffeine promotes lower LDL. But it depends on the filter type because if you use like a filtered coffee with an actual like drip type method, you filter out that caffeistol. Whereas unfiltered coffee, like the French press style, you don't because you're just kind of pushing it all down. So that was interesting. So yeah, unfiltered coffee raises LDL and filtered coffee does not have the same effect. Decaf is not caffeine free. It is lower caffeine. We just got to know that. It's not caffeine. It's still, it's 2 to 15 milligrams versus 100 to 200 milligrams.
But I guess like if you get soda and it says caffeine free, that's different.
Right, because I think caffeine is mostly added to soda versus naturally occurring in a coffee bean. Energy drinks, though, that's where your biggest risk is just because of the amounts that are in there and the ease of just getting a higher amount all at once. Adolescents and young adults are particularly at risk because they're just going to not think about it and have some energy drinks. Moderation is key. Pregnant people, like we said, should be cautious, less than 200. And then, just like we talked about a little bit, certain medications can affect the way your body processes it. So you do have to be mindful of that because you don't know that, I'm only taking in this much. Antidepressants, asthma medicines, thyroid medicines, over-the-counter allergy medicines, cocaine, amphetamines, PCP, other things can be potentiators of this. And people who hit that 1200, like we said, can come in actual shock, having actual cardiovascular issues because of it. And typically, most of the time it can be managed in the emergency room, but occasionally you'd have a severe enough patient that you'd be putting them into the ICU. Some patients may have literal circulatory collapse and needing intubation and being put on a ventilator, things along those lines if they have that 1200 toxic overdose all at once. And then, the other thing is consider patients who have an intentional overdose of caffeine, psychiatric evaluation, and I guess apparently sometimes severe symptoms or complications could require transfer to a place that has actual toxicologists on board, which I think is pretty uncommon to have that associated with your hospital. In the beginning, they might have to give you like charcoal in your stomach to reverse the uses of it. Obviously, lots of hydration. And then just 2 real quick points on actual medical uses. So apnea is the stopping of breathing. Premature babies could have something called apneas. And there have been studies showing that preterm infants less than 28 weeks can be given caffeine, and that does improve their survival rates without major disability. And it does help to reduce the risk of them stopping breathing. And then one other use, like we've talked about a little throughout this, is definitely for migraine. Over-the-counter Excedrin does have caffeine in it, and that's part of how it works. So it's a little bit of chicken or egg, right? So if you're a regular caffeine user like you talked about and you stop, well, the headache is from the stopping. But if you are a migraine person who's maybe not a regular caffeine user and use caffeine should help with the medications. Part of how it works also, though, it also vasoconstricts, which is tightening of your blood vessels. And part of the reason we theorize that migraines exist is because of dilation or loosening of those blood vessels. So part of the way it works is that, it's not a perfect science, especially because we talked about the differences in the way people metabolize caffeine. But it is something that can be used as an adjunct for migraines to help people along. So, as with anything, moderation.
Moderation.
And today is not moderation for me, but as soon as we are done recording, I am going to chug some water.
Good.
And move on from there.
Good for you. I'm happy for you.
What kind of fun silliness do you have today that is not super heavy?
So, I really went off the rails on this one.
I like it.
The name of my drink.
I'm excited.
It's super green, as you can see.
It is.
I did not take a picture of it, just because I didn't have my fancy glass. I'm not at home, all this other stuff. But super green, and it's called the Psychedelic Frog, which is literally exactly what I'm going to talk about. So no spoilers there. And it is 0.5 ounces blue curacao, 0.5 ounces coconut rum, 0.5 ounces Midori melon liqueur. I did not have Midori, so I just used some other off-name melon liqueur, and it still turned out green. So
I like you.
If you're in a pinch, you can use that. 0.5 ounces amaretto, 4 ounces pineapple juice, 2 ounces orange juice, a splash of Sprite, and a cherry for garnish. I didn't have a cherry, so I put in a dehydrated one.
Nice.
So you fill the cocktail shaker with ice, add the blue curacao, coconut rum, Midori, amaretto, and the 2 juices into the shaker. Shake vigorously until the ingredients are well combined and chilled. Then fill a mason jar or a glass with fresh ice cubes. Strain the cocktail into the glass. Top with a splash of Sprite for added fizz, and garnish with a cherry.
Nice.
So, as
Tastes
I said,
good?
I'm going to talk about psychedelic frogs. So my inspiration came from this kind of in a back way where several years ago now, which makes me feel really old because it feels like just yesterday, I started doing some training to become a psychedelic assisted psychotherapist. And so I got to learn a lot about psychedelics and their uses in mental health. And then when we started this podcast, I was like, oh, I'd love to talk about that. But a lot of that felt very clinical, very just not fun, and I wanted to do a fun episode, so I looked to Family Guy, where there is an episode in season 2, episode 14, called Let's Go to the Hop, where Peter goes undercover as a narc at Meg's school, which is Quahog High School, because there is a toad licking epidemic.
Jesus, kids.
So Peter somehow becomes the most coolest kid in school, and everybody is listening to him, even though he's supposed to be stopping this toad licking epidemic. And then it becomes into a whole thing. There's a whole song about if you gotta have toad, and it's a whole thing. Watch it.
So that's why it's like, let's go to the hop.
Yes.
Like that.
Exactly.
I get it.
And it's all very 1950s styled, kind of like
I
Grease.
like it.
So it's a fun episode, but I figured that was a fun, silly way to start talking about this topic because it is an actual thing. People are out there licking toads. So
really?
Let's
For
get
real?
into it. Yeah. So it to the point where many of the national park services have had to post signs and give fines for toad leaking.
Really?
Yes.
For real?
For reals.
In the U.S.? Do we have
yes.
those kind of toads in the U.S.?
Thank you for asking. So, according to the U.S. National Park Service,
okay,
they have been warning people to stop licking toads. So, in the U.S., the psychedelic frog that we have is called the Sonoran desert toad. And then we also have the Colorado river toad and the Sonoran desert toad. Both of those do emit psychedelic secretions to ward off their predators. And so it is a function of just how these frogs survive in the wild. But then once people learned that, hey, if I lick this, I'm going to get high, they started grabbing these toads and licking them. The problem is manyfold. It's not just twofold.
Well, yeah, don't hurt the frogs or toads.
So number one, the frogs have this secretion because it is warding off their natural predators. So if you're licking off the secretions, they are now more susceptible to their predators and could die. Now, they can make more. Tara is drinking her alcoholic whipped cream and enjoying it, making a mess while she does so.
Correct.
So they can make more of the secretions because they come from their glands. But however, it's not great for the toads and it's not great for the people.
Yeah.
Because if you just pick up a toad off the ground and you lick it, number one, who knows what the heck else is laying on this toad?
There's definitely poop on there of some sort.
There's some sort of feces is going to be in your mouth. Also, this is not a regulated way to partake of hallucinogens.
Dose dependent.
Yes. And so some of the side effects are hallucinations and euphoria. However, if you're taking too much toad, anxiety, nausea, seizures, and death. So Park Service was like, let's get the word out there to not do it. So literally the National Park Service released an article, and it says, and I quote, "As we say with most things you come across in a national park, whether it be a banana slug, an unfamiliar mushroom, or a large toad with glowing eyes in the dead of the night, please refrain from licking."
Okay.
And so that was posted at the Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument in Arizona. So it is something that is advertised in our parks.
What's fun is I think one of my next trips I want to do, or at some point next year maybe, is go out that way. So do some stuff out in Arizona. So I will make sure my husband and children do not lick any frogs or toads.
If you see those signs, take a picture for the pod.
I will, for sure.
Yeah. And so the glands of, this is also called the Colorado River toad that they're talking about here. The glands are located near its eyes and its jaw. So also, like, why are you putting an animal's face in your mouth? A live animal's face in your mouth? That's a whole issue too. And he's a pretty significant sized frog. He's about 7 inches long. So that's a big sucker. That's about yay big for those of us watching or seeing a clip. He's a little bit smaller than a piece of paper. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I used to catch frogs and toads when I was a kid.
And did you lick them?
I did not, but we used to keep them in like a box and
like a shoebox,
feed them like bugs, and then when they started looking lethargic, I'd be like, oh no, maybe we're killing you. Let's put you back out into the world.
And so the animals that it says animals that harass this species are generally intoxicated through the nose, eyes, or mouth. And so the secretions, I guess if it gets close to one of your open areas, you're going to be able to take in that toxin, and then you're not going to feel so great. The secretions sometimes have been used medically for treatments of irregular heartbeat, but that's done in a contained environment, monitoring.
Right.
It's more clinical than just grabbing a frog you saw on the side of the road. And for some time, these toads were being captured and then sold for those secretions. Now we're trafficking these animals. We know that moving animals from one area to another is going to harm the environment, and a lot of different issues with that. So we definitely want to stop them. And at this point, the Colorado River toad is considered endangered in California and threatened in New Mexico. So these are definitely species we do not want to be messing with, or else we will lose them. So that is the Colorado River toad.
Question, did they happen to say what their predators were? Like, I want to know if I'm seeing intoxicated, tripping, fox walking around, or what animal might become intoxicated. That would be quite interesting. Right? It's got to happen. So that's the whole point.
It says dogs that have attacked the toads have suffered paralysis or even death. Raccoons have learned to pull the toad out of the pond by their back legs and then feed on the back and the belly, so avoiding where those glands are.
Wow, I didn't know raccoons were that smart.
So raccoons have figured that. Raccoons are very smart. So they've learned about that. Yeah, so it seems like it's mostly dogs, probably feral dogs, but also maybe like coyotes, wolves, I would imagine.
That's the general.
In that area. Yeah. And raccoons are the two biggest things that they're talking about.
Okay.
Their breeding season is in July, so coming up soon. And it leads until August. They lay their eggs in ponds, as most frogs do. Psychotropic uses, here we go. So the glands, it's the parotoid gland.
Parotid.
Yeah, sorry.
We got those too.
The parotid glands produce what we colloquially know as DMT. So that's 5-MeO-DMT, which is a psychedelic compound, which I'll go into in a minute about what that is. And also bufotenin, which is also named bufo, after the genus of toads. And that is also toxic. So there's more than one chemical that they're releasing from these glands. And they are from the psychedelic family of the tryptamines. So we'll talk about that in a minute. I'll talk about all that. So just seeing if there's anything else about the little froggies. They're cute little suckers. I mean, they look like a frog. He's green and he has yellow eyes. And he's a frog. I mean, there's nothing.
I like frogs.
When I see the pictures of it, it's not like I'd be like, that's the frog that I need.
Oh, right. So that's interesting too, because certain species, especially of frogs and certain bugs, they have colorations and things, and then other ones mimic those because they're like, hey, those are the poisonous ones. I'm going to look like the poisonous one, so no one wants to eat me. But these don't look super fancy or brightly colored or...
Right. They're green. There's like a lighter green around the eyes where those glands are. And so that might be what that other article was referring to about glowing in the dark, maybe when the light reflects off of that. But otherwise, it's like a brownish green toad. Like
I'm picturing some like rainforest, weird, colory thing. Okay.
Nope. He's not one of those.
He's just kind of a normal, guys. Yeah. Have you eaten, random thought, have you ever eaten frog legs?
I have, actually. Yeah,
do you like them?
In France, I did. Didn't love them. I tried it once just for
they say it tastes like watery chicken to me. Like watery chicken. Yeah, I mean, I try everything, but I'm just random.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I tried it. I didn't see the lure. Wasn't loving it. And I kind of like frogs as... I was going to say frogs as people. You know what I mean? I like frogs as a species.
Frogs as friends.
Yeah. So there's actually several types of psychedelic frogs or animals. So in addition to the Sonora desert toad, which, like I said, can be found in the southwestern U.S. and northern Mexico, there is also the giant monkey frog, which is found in South America. And this one is definitely one that you would be like, that's the frog. He's like neon green. He's got big eyes. I feel like he's the frog that they pick when somebody I feel like he's the frog that was the Rainforest Cafe mascot. Because he looks like that.
Yeah.
Like bright green and cute little eyes. And that's what he looks like.
Now I want a frog.
So that one. And then there is the California harvester ant, which is found in the southwestern U.S. and northern Mexico. That apparently also has venom that can be hallucinogenic.
You're going to lick ants?
Don't eat ants. And these are like little red suckers. So I know those red fire ants. You do not want to eat those suckers.
Nope. And don't confuse your ants. You don't have the wrong ones.
This article says that an entomologist from the University of Arizona died in February of, what year is it? February of 2023 when he was stung by these ants. So he wasn't trying to eat them. He was actually working with them. And they had said that the pain of being stung by so many ants, along with extreme cold and fasting and sleep deprivation, where he was collecting them for research, triggered hallucinations. And he actually ended up passing away from that after. And this was, just a professional who was trying to research these animals. He wasn't doing anything wrong. And that particular ant, the toxins are emitted through a sting, and it says it feels nothing like a bee sting. The pain is intense, comes in waves, and is deeply visceral. It lasts 4 to 8 hours and is accompanied by a numb sensation at the site of the sting. And a lot of times you're not getting stung by just one ant. You're getting stung by several of them because the colonies are coming to defend against the predators. A person who eats 1,000 of those ants would probably die.
1,000? That's
because
quite a bit.
One ant is enough to kill a mouse.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's...
If you're thinking size-wise, that's a lot. So let's not touch the ants. Then there is a fish, a hallucinogenic fish called the Salima, genus Sarpa salapa, and it is found in temperate and ocean waters along the Atlantic coast of Africa to the Mediterranean. And so its defining features, it's kind of this pale sea blue color, silvery color, and then it has yellow stripes along the sides and a big yellow eye. So it would definitely be a fish that would stand out as looking different. There's been 2 cases of hallucinatory fish poisoning from 2006. So this isn't something that's happening very often. And so I'm not 100% sure. It's not striking me that this would be a fish that they would be catching for being served for food. I think it's just a fish that's out there in the world, and probably its main predator are other fish or other aquatic animals.
I believe there's something that they use for sushi, but it has to be prepared a certain way.
It's a certain type of blowfish.
Right. Yes.
So that is not this fish.
No.
But it says that the case of those 2 cases that are documented in the 2006 Journal of Clinical Toxicology, was a 40-year-old man. He ate a baked version of this fish. And he later experienced hallucinations of screaming animals and giant arthropods in his car.
Oh, that's very scary.
And so he did not die. He was just poisoned. But the symptoms did not go away until he had medical attention, and it was 36 hours later.
That's suffering, right? I hope you don't remember it. I hope it has also an amnesiac properties. I guess if he told
people, so he remembers.
Or unless during it he said, "This is what I'm seeing."
Yeah,
I hope that your brain sort of walls that off.
Yeah, 36 hours of hallucinating animals screaming at you.
Oh, that's got to be horrible.
Yeah, which is interesting. I'm wondering if that is the direct, the toxin is creating that specific hallucination, because I'm assuming its most common predator would be animals. So then hallucinating other scared animals.
I don't think anything could be that specific.
I just think it's interesting. And then, so that's the hallucinogenic fish. And then there is a sponge that grows in the Caribbean called the pitted sponge, where it also has DMT type properties like the frog, like the Colorado River frog. And I don't think a ton of people are eating this. Maybe if you're brushing against it while you're snorkeling or scuba diving, maybe that's probably why you would do it. But they did find that when they harvested this sponge for research, they were able to change the properties of the DMT, that it was acting more like an antidepressant. And so it was slowing down, sedating their prey. But the odd thing is the sponge isn't eating it. So like we know, like a cobra, when it bites, it's going to sedate its prey so then it can eat it. So this is interesting that this is
just like you float away sort of like lethargically.
But then again, if you're underwater and you float away lethargically, you're going to drown.
I wonder if, but with their predators might be other fish.
Yeah. And so they've been working on trying to harvest some of those compounds to make other antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs, or pain relievers for humans. So you may then ask, what is DMT? DMT, which is, I told you the whole long name, also called dimethyltryptamine. I said it. It's a psychedelic drug in the tryptamine class. So in terms of larger hallucinogenic or psychedelic classifications, it's looped in with LSD, mescaline, and psilocybin. And those are considered the most historically significant and most commonly used psychedelic substances used in like natural medicines. So a lot of indigenous peoples have been harvesting these compounds from nature, from natural plants, and using them as medicine throughout time. And so that's really the interesting thing that I learned about when I was doing that training, was that so much of this stuff originated in indigenous medicine and natural medicines, and how now using it for modern treatment, it's not necessarily new, but we're coming to more acceptance. And there's a lot of, unfortunately, racism and classism that was associated with those substances not being used. And there was a whole part of the training about how in the 70s, when there was the big psychedelic craze, why so much of that was crushed, not because of what the drugs were actually doing, but it was more a financial gain about how are we regulating this? How are we making money off of it? And of course, with any medication, with any drug, you're going to hear about some horror stories and some things gone wrong. But in general, the science was actually going quite far and making really wonderful advances, but then it was shut down because there was this concern about how it may impact other pharmaceutical companies, drugs, things like that. There's tons and tons of documentaries and books about kind of why psychedelics had to go underground for so long and how they are now gradually making a resurgence. And so just so you know, certain states in the U.S. do have certain psychedelics approved. So Colorado is a big one. You can legally use psilocybin and ketamine in Colorado. I also believe mescaline, but don't quote me on that. And the FDA, interestingly, is doing a lot of trials. And in New Jersey, they are in phase 4 of trials for psilocybin and MDMA to treat several disorders. So they're definitely trying to embrace it now and find out how it can be the most effective. There's been an overwhelming amount of treatment. About an overwhelming amount of research in treatment of war veterans with PTSD, with severe PTSD, with psychedelics, and have seen amazing improvement. We're seeing people who were disabled severely by their constant PTSD flashbacks and anxiety, who after a series of maybe 4 or 5 treatments have returned to life pre-PTSD.
Wow.
And
I mean, it's interesting though, because I think you've read all these books, that this whole how are we going to regulate a thing, it's because some of these can be used both medicinally and recreationally.
Exactly.
Just like marijuana, it's that difference. Whereas we say alcohol is recreational only, these prescriptions and over-the-counter medications, it's that line. And I feel like they just don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you said that, because a lot of these substances, they are available, not through legal means, but you can get a hold of this stuff. And so knowing that if you are choosing to try these psychedelics, that you want to be doing this in a safe environment. One of the big things with a lot of the psychedelics is extreme dehydration. So you want to make sure that you're hydrated. You don't want to be overstimulated. So you're not dropping this in the middle of a club. You should be doing this in a quiet room, preferably with like a friend or a family nearby, and just kind of easing into it. And that's really more of the therapeutic side of things, where we were learning about psychedelic assisted therapy, is that you are constantly checking someone's vitals and making sure medically that they're okay. You're keeping them in a safe space. The lights lights are dimmed, they're in a comfortable position, and they're really able to, the point of the psychedelic assisted therapy is that you want to, I don't want to say enjoy the high, but you want to be using that to be working through something. And so if it's bringing up past trauma, if it's bringing up feelings, if it's helping you work through something, to really be in that in the moment instead of out and partying. That's not the point of these drugs.
In the training that you did, was this something that was assisted with like during therapy? Like is that how they were trying to use it? Like you're doing therapy with the person while they are currently using the substance?
So yeah, the process, and like I said, it's not fully FDA approved yet, but the process which seems the safest and the most effective for folks is that they're having several meetings ahead of time to talk about what these mental health concerns are. Let's say, for example, PTSD, talking about what the PTSD looks like for them, when it began, how well is it managed on these other medications, how often are they affected by it. So first you kind of get a groundwork of what we're dealing with. Then they're getting a full medical workup, making sure that using the substance is going to be safe for them physically, biologically. And then they're walked through the process multiple times before even actually doing it, kind of just told what to expect to prep for it. So then when you're actually going to do the session, they are coming in, they will be with you for, anywhere from 3 to 8 to 24 hours. Like they're staying with someone that whole time, they're being monitored. And so essentially the physician is going to administer the medication. And then usually the physician just has to be present, available. They don't have to be in the room with the person the whole time.
Right.
But they'll have what we call a sitter. So that's somebody who's trained in psychedelic assisted therapy who will be sitting with them the whole time. At first, you're really just kind of being quiet, keeping them calm, putting on soothing music, whatever they want, making people comfortable. And then as they're starting to maybe hallucinate things, then you're writing down what they're saying or you're processing with them. You're basically kind of just their partner during this episode with them. And then afterwards, that's when you're doing the real therapeutic work, where you start
unpacking
to discuss
it all.
Yes. Okay. What they remember, what you wrote down, how it's impacted them. And then that whole process for just one session, in theory, should take several weeks. And then if you decide you want to do another dosage, that would be, titrated to a certain amount. And then you would figure out how long that session is going to be. But they are finding that people are having success after maybe 3 or 4 sessions versus literal years of therapy.
Especially for that deep PTSD type trauma. Like that's pretty interesting. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So as far as DMT and where people are getting it now, because we know it's not regulated by the government, it does occur naturally in several plants. So there's Psychotoria viridis, Mimosa hostilius, Anadenartha peregrina, and you can tell I'm not a botanist.
No, plant names are hard.
Diplopyotheris cabanerana. So those are some plants.
It's just all those Latin things thrown together. That's essentially what the names are.
For some reason, well, this one, everyone's heard of an acacia tree. That has significant levels of DMT in it. And there's over 800 species of acacia. So many of them have significant levels of DMT in them. So this is something that I would assume that people who are out there illegally selling DMT are probably growing in their basements, much like many people did with marijuana for a very long time. So DMT, it's several different molecules with different structures. But as I said before, the one that most people know about are the 5-MeO DMT. There's also NN-DMT, which is the one that frog emits. And there's a few other ones that I'm not going to go into. But there's a lot of traditional indigenous people's history tied with this. And I think that's so important for people to look into if this is something that you want to explore. Hopefully you're doing it safely and it's regulated and you're doing it assisted, because in some states it is legal. So depending on where you're listening, in other countries too, but making sure you're doing it appropriately, but also being respectful to the origin of where this all comes from. So ayahuasca, that's a big one where it's combining DMT and Harmala alkaloids. And so everybody's heard about, going and taking ayahuasca out in the desert or going to Peru and taking it and things like that. But that is a sacred ceremony. And so making sure that you are adhering to that and doing that in the way that it's meant to be done. And even in those ceremonies, you have someone who's essentially a sitter. You're not just taking it off, on the beach because it sounds like fun. It is a ceremony and it is a ritual that you should be following through, because that is the purpose of it, both culturally, but also to get these positive effects out of it.
So plants, like I see a lot of the historical significance. As far as the actual animals, is there like historical and like indigenous indigenous people, like who like we're the ones who lick frog. Like, is that like a thing?
It
I
doesn't
don't
seem
know.
like it. No, it seems like a lot of with the animals, it's more of their natural defense. And then through mistakes, through
Right.
things like that, we've found that, hey, you
Right.
can use this to get high, but it's not
Human,
necessarily part of a ritual.
yeah, because just humans are weird and we'll just find anything. Like, who's the first person who licked a toad? That's what I want to know.
Honestly, it was probably a researcher, because how else would you know?
I don't know.
And I'm not saying that that researcher was problematic. I'm just saying the first person probably had to know what they were doing.
Right. And it's so crazy. I like a lot of the things that occur in nature. Like, who was the first person who ate that berry or smoked that plant and was like,
well, I can tell you, in 1931, German-Canadian chemist Dr. Richard Mansky synthesized DMT for the first time. So he made the first synthetic version of it.
Okay.
Obviously, he must have known some of the natural medicines.
Something, obviously.
To be able to replicate that in a lab. And then in 1936, Japanese chemist Toshio Hoshino synthesized 5-MeO-DMT, which is, like I said, it's a different type of DMT for the first time. And then in the 1950s, that's when we started seeing more publications and research about administering it to both healthy people and to other people. But it was a Hungarian psychiatrist, Dr. Zara, Zara. He was considered to be the father of DMT because he was studying the psychotropic effects on himself and his colleagues.
Okay.
And so, again, he was doing it for research. And this kind of came after there was that LSD research that was really spiking in the late 50s to the 60s to the 70s. So he had already looked into LSD and was looking for other compounds that were similar. And I think what a lot of people forget, we've heard a lot of, conspiracy theories and things like that, is a lot of this research was done by the government and done by like highly esteemed researchers to figure out what to do with this. And so it wasn't, a bunch of kids tripping on the beach to start. That's just what it's become. And then during the 1950s and 1970s, it was the golden age of psychedelic research, which then many of those doctors had to go underground because in 1971, DMT was prohibited and placed as a Schedule I substance, along with all of the other psychedelics at that point. And then from the 90s to 95, there was a lot of underground research, and that continues today. And like I said, now the FDA in the US is now more on board with doing some more clinical trials to approve for medical use only. There's a really good book. I haven't read it, but there's also a YouTube video called DMT, the Spirit Molecule, that talks a lot about the initial research on it and where it was meant to go. So it's really, really cool stuff. I think at one point I may cover some of those other psychedelics just because there's a lot of talk about them out there, and there is a lot of mental health uses.
Ketamine's huge.
Ketamine, I think, unfortunately, ketamine's gotten a really bad name due to, we've seen a lot of overdoses, like with Matthew Perry and some unregulated things going on. But that also can have amazing effects on people. And
his book was pretty good. I listened to his book, and it was doing well for him. I don't know what went wrong at the end.
That's the thing with ketamine and a lot of these psychedelics. Even though you can have amazing results from them, they are addictive. And so it's managing it, because that's the other thing is, if we're using ketamine to treat substance abuse, we know that person has an addictive potential already. So that really needs to be monitored. And
I didn't realize ketamine was addictive. Yeah.
And unfortunately, Matthew Perry specifically, there was a lot of talk about how, because he was so famous and had so much money, much like we see with many celebrities, people then start to lose that, ethics about it and say, well, he's going to pay me, so I'm going to get it to him. And then that's when, unfortunately, people die from these things.
Yeah. But I do highly recommend read or listen to his. I listened to it, so it was him narrating. It was actually, it was before he died. Yeah. It was actually really interesting to see everything he went through. And there is a lot of substance abuse and psychological things that he speaks about. So he was an interesting person to give a really raw sort of presentation of that.
Yeah. And then, so those of you who have never taken psychedelics, myself included, I've never taken one. I've been curious. I've looked into going to special institutes that do it, the right way and having that experience. I've not done it yet, but I'm open to it if it should come across in an appropriate way. But some of the positive effects of specifically DMT is vivid imagery, powerful physical sensations, spiritual experiences, mood enhancement, and euphoria. Some of the negative effects: fear, anxiety, paranoia, nausea, vomiting, chest pain, dizziness, diarrhea, increased blood pressure, increased heart rate. And you're like, oh, that sounds terrible. But honestly, those are a lot of side effects for a lot of medications.
Of a lot of things. True.
Most medications have those same side effects.
Yes.
Some of the physiological effects of DMT can be altered cognitive functioning. Obviously, if you're tripping balls, you're not going to really know what the heck is going on. Reduced motor activity, increased prolactin and cortisol levels, altered blood pressure, increased heart rate, increased pupils. So that kind of typical thing of what we think of when we see someone who's high, seeing all those things or noticing all those changes. And then some of the psychological and emotional effects of DMT, which this is really important when you're thinking of someone using it for therapy. Altered time and perception, euphoria. If this is someone who's severely depressed all the time, now they're finally feeling something other than depression. Visual distortions, near-death experiences. So, you want to make sure someone's being monitored. Auditory effects, depersonalization, deep immersion. So feeling like they're really deep into that high and cannot get out, which in a way can be good or bad. Depends on if you're having a good relaxing time or not. And then the visual and the auditory hallucinations. And all of that stuff comes from Psychedelic Support, which is a wonderful website that does the training that I was taking. But there's a lot of really great places out there that give you all of the good information, talk about the research, talk about the effects, talk about the cultural considerations. So it's a really good resource. And then finally, if you are thinking of using DMT, I do not suggest it. If you are using it, use it with a medical professional and be monitored. But you should not be using DMT with other psychedelics. That includes LSD, mushrooms, MDMA, anything else. Not with benzos, no opioids, no alcohol, no vasodilators, no blood pressure medications, antihistamines, muscle relaxants, amphetamines, cocaine, cannabis, ketamine, antipsychotics. Basically, if you're using this, it's
all
only
the same.
Only this, nothing else. And that is because, like I said, all of those physical effects that you're going to have, if you're using something else in combination, that's when things get really dangerous really quick.
Absolutely. And with almost any drug use.
Exactly.
That's really.
Exactly. And so there's lots of ways to take in it. There is vapes that you can use. You can be using it by pill form. You can be using it naturally right off the plants. There's lots of ways to use it. But again, if you are using it, please be using it in a monitored setting with a professional. And there's lots more I could talk about, but I'm going to stop there.
It's pretty interesting, though.
Yeah.
It's not something I've ever really learned about other than these are drugs.
Well, I think that's
about all we know.
Yeah, I think in the 70s, there was the big crackdown on all of that. And so it was something that people just, unless you already knew about it, people didn't speak about for a very, very long time. And now all of a sudden, unfortunately, a lot of the younger generation likes to think they made stuff up. Y'all didn't make this. This has been out there forever, long before any of us who are living on this earth have existed. This is a natural medicine. It has been around forever. And we're just figuring out how to use it. And some people are not using it appropriately.
The whole thing, I'm sure somewhere we can find something that relates to this about how the FDA started with these classifications of scheduling the drugs, because
there's a whole documentary just on why they became illegal. So I could definitely cover that.
Send that to me too. So I'd be interested in watching it as well, because that in itself, I think, is it a medical reason? Is it a political reason? Is it a money reason? Is it a safety reason? Is it, and there's a whole lot to talk about with that. So I think that would be pretty cool. And there's some countries where everything's legal,
Here in the US, it was definitely highly politically motivated, but that was not the only part of it. So
yeah, I'd definitely be interested in that. So cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So we did.
Is that what we got? So caffeine and psychedelics not used together.
Do not use them together. After everything we talked about, maybe we shouldn't be using them at all. But I'm a realist, and I understand that it's going to happen for some folks. So just be safe.
Yes. Safety first.
Yeah.
But, quite interesting. I think that these are things that need to be further explored for sure, especially on the psychedelic. I think the PTSD research is fascinating. I think that would be really beneficial to some people if we could find something that's really devastating.
And like I said, I wanted to hold some stuff for other episodes. But
yes, of course.
Lots of research in the fields of anxiety, eating disorders, autism, so many areas. There's been psychedelic research that have shown really, really wonderful effects. It's just we're still in the very early stages of that stuff.
Yeah, so it's pretty neat. So don't lick frogs. Don't have caffeine pills. Do sing in 80s, 90s neon leotards.
My goodness.
Those are the do's and don'ts of this episode. Please watch Saved by the Bell and The Family Guy for a good fun laugh.
And please listen to our podcast. We want you to rate, review, and follow or subscribe, depending on what platform you're on. We're on all social media. We are on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok,
Facebook, YouTube.
Yes. And then you can also send us emails to medicalmediamixer@gmail.com.
And definitely tell us things, weird things like that you want us to talk about. Licking frogs. Do you think we were going to cover that?
Right.
Give us some fun topics. We'll totally do them.
Or if you've licked a frog, tell us how it was for you.
Yes, because we do listener stories. So that's a good spin-off. Anything we've covered, if you have a personal story that you're willing to share anonymously or non-anonymously. Non-anonymously, we can use that for a listener's episode. I think that'd be neat. Reflect back on anything we've covered. You want to tell me how you thought you were dying from the flu, or how you faked a brain tumor, or started dancing uncontrollably, or
if you faked a brain tumor, maybe make it anonymous, but that's okay.
What else did we cover? Let's see.
Covered a lot of stuff.
But that would be, it doesn't have to be a new topic. It can be, let's talk about something that you experienced with the topic we've already covered. That would be a fun way to do things.
Yeah, we would love that. And then we're also always open to suggestions for things that you would love to hear us cover and talk about.
Yeah, tell us your favorite show, movie, whatever, inspire us.
Yes, because that's the thing, especially with my field. I know your field is a little bit harder, but with my field, psychology isn't everything. So I am sure that if somebody just sent in a random TV show that they're obsessed with, I could find something to talk about.
There you go.
Yes. And then it'll give me a new show to watch. So I'm down.
All right. So I've drank all my drink and I've eaten all of my whipped cream.
So you're telling me you're choosing with an empty cup?
I am. Isn't that against certain rules and cultures?
I think it's when you start a cheers with an empty cup.
Yeah.
That's okay. You drank already.
So thank you for listening to Medical Media Mixer.
The perfect cocktail. Cheers.
Cheers.